and welcome to the Dr. Anne Marie Evers Show, where dreams really can and do come true. And welcome to the home of affirmations, forgiveness, thoughts, mind power, creative visualization, angels, and much more. And today we're going to be talking a bit about some of the unexplained. And so it's going to be an exciting show. And today I have my very special guest, Garnet Schulhauser, who is no stranger to the Dr. Anne Marie Evers Show. And I've had the privilege of interviewing this gentleman several times. And he's one of my favorite guests, bringing us information about things that could be kind of unexplainable to some of us. For some people, perhaps those who are tuning in for the first time, my name is Dr. Anne Marie Evers, and I've been a regular show host on Contact Talk Radio, CTR Network, for over 15 consecutive years. And I have interviewed guests over that period of time, and it's my goal to teach the power of properly done affirmations, how to make them work, and also to bring up new subjects for the listeners. And so with all having said that, today we'll be visiting with Garnet Schulhauser. And so welcome to the show, Garnet. I'm so glad to have you back.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, Dr. Anne. It's a delight to be here again. I've been on your show before, and it's always a pleasure.
Yes, and you're one of my very much awesome, wonderful guests that I really like, one of my favorites. So I'm so glad to have this hour with you today. And I want to talk a little bit about yourself. And you know, Garnet, some of my people that I know ask me, how could a gentleman that was a well-respected lawyer in Alberta and start going on trips with this person that used to be like a homeless person and now is really helping you find all kinds of things, named Albert.
Yes. Okay, well, let me just give you a brief background for the people who may not be familiar with me. In any event, I was, as Dr. Anne mentioned, I was a corporate lawyer practicing law in Calgary for a long time. How it all happened was that one day I was strolling down the street one sunny afternoon when suddenly out of nowhere, a homeless man just jumped in front of me. And this homeless man, he looked the typical part. He had long, greasy hair and scraggly beard and dirty, slept-in clothes. But the reason I didn't sort of walk around him like I usually did when I encountered homeless people was that he had these amazing, dazzling, sparkling blue eyes. And he was looking at me very intently, and he seemed to be sending me a wave of pure, unconditional love towards me that was infusing my whole body with an amazing sense of peace and security and well-being. It was an amazing feeling, and I stood there like a deer caught in the headlights. And after, I don't know how long, because I think I was in a time warp, he broke the spell by saying to me, "Why are you here?" And then he promptly disappeared into a nearby store. So when I finally collected my wits and got back into the scheme of things and the reality, I went into the store to find him. There was only one entrance and one exit. I went in there, but he was nowhere to be found. And he had not come out as far as I could tell. So I went out into the street and I walked up and down for several blocks hoping to spot him, because I really felt like I needed to know who this guy was, why he had stopped me. In any event, he had basically disappeared into thin air. I couldn't find him anywhere. So then that night I resolved that I would go back the next day to try to find him. And so I did. Went back to the same street at the same time of day, hoping to spot him. And I walked up and down for 15 or 20 minutes. I was about to give up hope when I spotted him sitting all alone on a bench. So I went up to him and I said, "Who are you and why did you stop me the other day?" And he said, "I'm a soul just like you. I'm here to answer your questions and help you on your journey." So that was the beginning of a dialogue that I had with this homeless man that went off and on for several months. And he told me early on that he was really one of my spirit guides in disguise, and that his name was Albert. And he showed up to me, he manifested himself in physical form for the first 3 times that we met. And then after that, he was just a voice in my head as we communicated by telepathy. And so this dialogue went on for, as I say, for quite a while, off and on. And he basically answered all the big questions in life that everyone asks at one point or another, like, who am I? Why am I here? What's my life purpose? And what happens to me when I die? And he answered all those questions and many more that I posed to him. And then he surprised me partway through the conversation by saying, I'm not just giving you this information to satisfy your curiosity, because I want you to write a book about what I revealed to you so that everyone will have access to it. And so, although I was reluctant at first because I'd never even dreamed of writing a book, I finally resolved to go ahead and write the manuscript for my first book, which was Dancing on a Stamp. And so then after I'd finished that one, Albert came back into my life in a different format. I was sound asleep in my bed one night when I heard a noise. I woke up and I saw this ghost-like apparition standing in the doorway of my bedroom. And when it moved closer, I could see it was my spirit guide, Albert, but he was in astral form now. And he basically said, I'm coming to take you on a series of out-of-body astral trips. I'm going to take you to the spirit side to meet with some very wise people, to other places in the universe to see other civilizations, and to other places on Earth where there's things that I think you should see so you can write about in your next book. And he said, and by the way, you wrote one book, you're going to write at least 3 or 4 more, which took me by surprise in any event. So then I went off with Albert on an astral trip in my astral body. My physical body was still staying behind. And we went to the spirit side and to a number of other places. And that resulted in my next 3 books, Dancing Forever with Spirit, Dance of Heavenly Bliss, and Dance of Eternal Rapture. And then after finishing those, I have had subsequent trips with Albert, and I've submitted the manuscript for my 5th book, Dancing with Angels in Heaven, to my publisher, and hopefully they will pick it up and publish it. So that's the background how I met Albert. And Albert has an amazingly wise, compassionate spirit who really wants to, he is utilizing me as one of his messengers. He has many. And so I've been doing my best to try to write books about what he showed me and the people that I spoke to. Hopefully that they will be of some use to other people.
And you get a chance to answer. You can ask questions, can't you?
Yes.
Yeah. And if you now, what's
he doesn't always answer all my questions. He answers a lot of them, but a lot of times he'll say, that's not important, or you don't need to know that now. He has a very set agenda, Dr. Ann, about the things he wants me to see. And, and if I've sort of tried to stray off course, he'll put me back on his agenda because he really knows what he wants me to write about. And so he doesn't answer every question I give to him, but he answers a lot of them. And so I've gotten a lot of wisdom from him.
Wow. And do you think he chose you because you were putting out to the universe that you were interested in things like that? Do you think that could be?
Well, yeah, I don't think that I really was. I mean, in a sense I was, because I had been raised as a Roman Catholic, but then by the time I hit my 20s and 30s, I had rejected a lot of their beliefs because I didn't think they really made any sense. So then I was sort of in no man's land with no belief system to latch onto. And so I kept on asking myself as I mentioned, the eternal questions of life, hoping that I could find the answer somewhere. So that may have been one of the things that prompted him. But he actually told me that he and I had planned this encounter before I incarnated, so that when I was doing my life plan, setting out my life that I was going to incarnate into, I chose him to be one of my spirit guides, and then he and I agreed that at some point when it was appropriate, he would show up in my life, and we would go from there. And so, and of course, I don't remember any of that, but that's what he said, is that we had arranged this beforehand. And when I asked him, well, why did you pick me? I mean, to get your revelations and write your books, he said, because I had some previous experience as a writer in one of my previous lives, and so he thought that this may work. That it just went. I mean, it's one thing to tell somebody a bunch of truths and revelations, but they have to be able to put it down in writing in a way that's comprehensible and easily read by other people. And so, and hopefully, I've carried out that mission.
Job in all of them. They're all the books you've written. You did a wonderful job, and I think Albert's been looking over your shoulder, hasn't he?
Oh yeah, no, he does give me some tips about writing. One of the first tips he said was, whatever you do, don't write like a lawyer. I want you to write,
That makes me laugh. I used to work for a lawyer. That makes me laugh.
Yeah. Don't use big, fancy, convoluted words. He said, write so it's easy to read and easy to understand. So that was one piece of advice.
Yeah, not there for this indenture witness is that, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so he's always been there. You know, I'm still in contact with him. Excuse me. He doesn't always respond immediately when I contact him, but he's generally there. And so and I have no idea. Like after book 5, I don't know what he's going to ask me to do, but you know, I'm sort of I march to his orders, and whenever he
Wow.
gives me marching orders, away I go.
And what about your lovely wife and family? They go along with everything with this?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, my wife is very spiritual, so she didn't even bat an eye when I said that I'd had an encounter with my spirit guide, and I was speaking to my spirit guide, and I was writing a book about it. She didn't even bat an eye because she's sort of all on side with those spiritual matters. And my two sons, they basically they're okay. I mean, we don't really talk about it very much, but they're okay with it. They haven't rejected me or made fun of me or anything. So
Oh, that's good because that helps an awful lot when your family is there, especially your mate, you know, your
yeah,
wife. Yeah.
exactly. No, I have lost some acquaintances and friends along the way, like some of my former law partners and clients and other colleagues. Some of them think, no, they haven't said this to my face, but no doubt they think I've become senile. Uh, and but you know, so I've lost a few people along the way, but I've gained many more new friends who are very spiritually enlightened, and that really makes up for it. So overall, very positive experience. You know, and you know, if I was still practicing law, I wouldn't be invited on your show, Dr. Ann. So that's a positive step.
Yeah, that is a wonderful thing. Well, now, what would you like to talk a little bit about your books as they progressed, what you learned? The first book you wrote, and that was Dancing on a Stem. What
Mhm.
was that about? Was that teaching people a certain thing?
Yeah, it was basically my questions were sort of about the basic questions that everyone asks, as I mentioned. So what Albert said was, okay, you know, in answer to who am I? He said, you're an eternal soul, just like everyone else. You know, you go on forever, so that when you're having a spiritual journey in a human body, when your physical body dies, you go back to the spirit side, which is where you came from beforehand. Spirit side is just a very high vibrational place where souls there are basically beings of energy. They don't have physical bodies. They don't need to eat, drink, breathe, or procreate, or any of that sort of stuff. I mean, it's a kind of a place, a wonderful place that some religions call heaven. I use the term spirit side. So that's where he said that's where you started off from, and you chose to come to incarnate on planet Earth as a human because you wanted to experience certain challenges and learn certain lessons to help you in your evolution as a soul. So that's why you're here. You know, if you ask the question, why am I here? Well, because I chose to be here. And before we're born, we each prepare a life plan, which sets out the significant aspects of our proposed new lives. Things like the identity of our parents, the place we're going to be born, the first language you learn, identity of our siblings, and so on. So that sort of sets the framework. And then we set other sort of milestones in our life plan that we hope to hit. But the trouble is that once we're born, we don't remember that we have a life plan, and we have free will to act and make decisions. And so we often sort of stray off course, which Albert says that's not a problem, because no matter what you do on this planet, you can always learn something, even if you don't learn all the things you hope to learn. And when you go back to the spirit side, you can regroup and say, okay, well, if I miss some things, I can go back again as many times as I like. But the real key there is that we choose to do it. No one forces us to come, and we sort of choose the basic framework for the life that we're going to have. So the other thing, which is be startling for a lot of Christians, and I was raised as a Roman Catholic, is that, you know, I was taught when I was younger that you know, God is a supreme being who you know, manipulates events on earth, who put us here for whatever reason that he might have in mind, which we're not allowed to know. And Albert says, no, God or the source didn't put us here. We chose to come, and the source does not manipulate events on earth, nor does the source make rules. So contrary to what a lot of traditions say, particularly the Catholic Church, is like, okay, here's all the rules that we have. They came from God, and you better follow them, because if you don't, if you breach those rules, you've sinned, and if you don't make amends, you're going to go to an awful place called hell when you die. Well, Albert said that God, the source, doesn't make rules, and then when you die, there is no judgment. The source does not judge you, does not punish you. Hell does not exist, and the only person who judges what you've just done in your life is you when you go through a life review. So that's very comforting. It's really good to know that that there is he basically gave me a set of beliefs that I could latch onto that made sense. They kind of rang true in my heart, and I really have no doubt that what he says is totally accurate. Although, for sure, most of what he said flew in the face of what Christian holy men have been preaching for centuries. But I was okay with that. I mean, I'm really happy with what he told me and with the belief system he's now given me.
And who came up with the name Dancing on a Stamp? That's really quite cute.
Well, yeah, there's a good story behind that. I was complaining during one of the conversations, I was complaining about something that wasn't going right in my life. And he said, you know, the problem you have is that he says, it's like if you're in the middle of a big, beautiful ballroom, you're standing there on gleaming hardwood floors, the band is playing wonderful dance music. Everyone around you is up and swirling around the whole dance floor, enjoying the sound of the music and the action of dancing. And he said, you spent too much time on one spot, like you're wearing leg shackles. And he said, you have to break free of your shackles and quit dancing on a stamp. And I thought that was a good title for my book.
That is, it's very, I like that. I thought that was very, it makes you want to look at it. Now, what else did you, and read it. Now, what else did you say, Garnet, about in that book that people should, what's the main story on that other than what you've just outlined to us?
Well, I mean, the whole message, underlying message, of course, is that love is the answer. That what we really need to do is all embrace love and try to stifle our negative emotions like fear, anger, hate, greed, and so on. Those negative emotions cause a lot of the problems on our planet, as you know. And so he said, you really have to sort of fully embrace love. And to the extent that you can fully embrace love, then when something happens to you in your life as you travel on your journey on planet Earth, you know, how you react to things is really the most important thing. Not what happens to you, but how you react to it. So you can have something bad happens to you. You have to sort of look at it with the right intention, which is that there must be a lesson there for me. What did I learn from that? Find out what the lesson is, learn from it, and then move on. And don't keep on worrying about it. You know. And he basically said you can learn way more from your failures than you can from your successes. And all this is just part of our evolution as souls, trying to move through this planet Earth, which he said is one of the toughest schools in the universe, because there are other places that we can incarnate on other planets and other life forms. I mean, the universe is very vast, and there's lots of opportunity. But Earth is one of the toughest schools. And so he said, you know what? He often said to me, humans should pat themselves on the back for being so courageous as to venture into this tough school called Earth. So, you know, his message is, Earth is not a happy, for a lot of, it's not totally happy place. There's some happy moments, there's some tragedy, some sad moments, but that's just all part of the school here. And we have to be able to learn how to react appropriately for each thing we encounter. And that's just all part of our growth and evolution.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I want to ask you a question, Garnet. Have you had a chance to ask him anything about this you know, the changing thing going on with COVID-19?
Yeah, I did. Actually, he did one better. He actually took me for another conversation with Gaia, the consciousness of Mother Earth. Now, in my other books, I've had 2 previous visits with Gaia. This may surprise a lot of people. It surprised me because I didn't know that our planet had a consciousness, but it does. And so Gaia is sort of the consciousness of our dear Mother Earth. And so he took me to have another visit with Gaia, and I asked her the question, like, what's happening with this COVID-19? She says, well, this pandemic is really another of Mother Earth's cleansing, periodic cleansing efforts. I mean, Mother Earth has had visited a number of different plagues on humankind before, and sometimes on other animals, and it's a matter of sort of a cleansing. What she's really trying to do is give humans a warning, a warning shot across our bow to tell us that we have to change our ways, or things will get really bad. And so what she really wants to do is stop the pollution, and humans are just great at polluting Mother Earth. I mean, we're getting better at it, but we just spew all kinds of toxic fumes into the atmosphere and poison our rivers and oceans and whatever. And she says it's got to stop. And so she's trying to tell us to wake up and see what's going on and how you have to change. And it was interesting because during the lockdowns of the pandemic across the world, a lot of things, different things happened. Like apparently some people said there was no smog over LA, which traditionally has a lot of smog. That's because people weren't driving and burning fuel and so on during the lockdown. The canals in Venice, Italy, apparently it became so clear that people could see dolphins swimming in them. So there's a number of examples where, you know, in a lot of places they can say for the first, like in Egypt, there was a story on Facebook that for the first time in many years, people in Cairo could actually see the pyramids because the atmosphere is so clear.
That's so
So
true.
she's really trying to get us to the point where we realize that what we're doing with our pollution is really harmful to Mother Earth, harmful to us, harmful to the other creatures. And so this pandemic was just sort of one of her wake-up calls. And, you know, and she said, it's not going to go on forever. It will pass. But hopefully humans can learn something from this and learn that if we stop our pollution and stop burning fossil fuel and stop the other things that we do, that we can have a much happier place to live in.
I totally believe, and I think I've talked to a lot of people, Garnet, in my life and counseling and that, and some are saying that now they spend more time with their family and they get to really to know their children when they're schooling them at home. And there's some bright sides to it, like you're saying too, isn't there?
Yeah, no, and that's another good example, Dr. Ann, about people are getting closer to their family, getting to know each other better. They're changing sort of their outlook, and that's also for the better. Now, it's a tragedy for sure that so many people are sick and have died, but
Yeah, I agree.
but this is one of those things that Mother Earth sometimes feels like she has to unleash on the planet in order to get people to wake up and pay attention to what they're doing. And so it's unfortunate. I mean, and there's been worse ones. The bubonic plague killed a lot more people back in the 13th century, and the Spanish flu killed a whole lot more people in 1918. This one isn't going to be anywhere near as bad, but I think we're noticing it more, and hopefully we'll pay more attention to it.
Of course, because we have more facilities to do it. We're more, you know, we have all these updated things that we can do with you can know exactly what's happening in a few minutes from the other side of the world, you know.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so anyway, that was the message I got from Gaia, which really made a lot of sense. And I hope that humans can come out of this pandemic, come out on the other side, and try to put together some of the things that were good about the pandemic, like spending more time with family, doing less pollution, that sort of thing. Hopefully, some of that will stick.
Yes, and that was for you, Ruth. You asked the question, so I wanted to answer it with you. So now I want to get back to your books now. We don't have time to go through each one in depth, but can you sort of give us an idea? So would the folks start and buy the first one first, or does it matter where they pick up the books, or how does that work?
I would recommend reading them in the order that I published them. So the first book is Dancing on a Stamp, then Dancing Forever with Spirit, then Dance of Heavenly Bliss, and then Dance of Eternal Rapture. And then if my fifth book gets published, then do that one. I think it makes sense to follow that order.
I think so too. And I would change the word to if, saying when it gets published, because it will.
Okay, thank you very much for that vote of encouragement.
I truly believe that. And so that's exciting. So what do you think would be, you know, you saying from your experiences, I want to find for folks that are listening and that are really interested in this, what things would you bring up to them, Garnet, that they could sort of help them? A lot of people are afraid right now and they're going into fear. And I'm trying to keep them on the bright side and say, this too shall pass, and do the best you can, and be thankful for what we have, and all the things like that. What would you be able to add to help the listeners too? Because there's a lot of people really need help.
Yeah, I know. It seems, and certainly it's very difficult times for everyone, especially people who are, you know, who are unemployed right now, who maybe have a loved one who's ill or has died from the pandemic. So it's really tough, but you have to keep in mind that there's a lesson for all of us in this. And what we need to do is try to strive to figure out what the lesson is, and then try to make some good use out of the lesson that we've learned. And to know that the real comforting thing, Dr. Ann, is that it doesn't matter. I mean, things can be really difficult, but at the end of the day, we all end up back on the spirit side, which is really a beautiful, wonderful kind of paradise. And so, you know, with that in mind, you know that you can never become lost or go wrong, because you're always going to end up when your physical body dies. And so the real test then is to say, okay, this is temporary, it's going to pass. Then you need to move on and see if you can improve your life based upon what you've learned from the lockdown, the pandemic, and all the other tragedies we're going through, and then try to make your life better, try to make it a better life for the people around you, your family, your friends, your co-workers. And if we all sort of dive in and try to do that, we can make everything, we can come out of this better than how we went into it, Dr. Ann. That's the real comforting, if we just pay attention.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I really appreciate that. And now, so what would when we go to bed at night, can we put ourselves in that state, or are we already in it when we go to bed?
Well, you mean in terms of astral traveling?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Albert says that everyone, when we sleep at night, for every one of us, our souls leave our body temporarily and go to the spirit side or to other places in the universe. And so every one of us astral travels every night, except we usually aren't allowed to remember it in the morning. Occasionally, we may remember parts of it, and we think that's just a dream. But most of the time, we can't really remember the particulars of our trips, and that's by design. But when our souls leave our body every night, we go and we have a huddle with our spirit guides, and it's basically like football players huddling with their coach at halftime. And sort of like, okay, how did I do so far? What did I do today? What can I do better tomorrow? So we do get coaching. Then we come back into our bodies in the morning, and we don't remember the particulars of those conversations, but basically it's stuck in our subconscious. And so we try to, based upon what we heard from our guides, we try to live a better life when we're here. So you know, we all astral travel. I was fortunate enough to be able to remember my trips with Albert because he wanted me to remember so I could write books about it. But for sure, you and I and everyone else, we all travel astrally every night, which is good because I think it's sort of like a timeout for our souls. It's really difficult to be in a human on planet Earth because of all the trials and tribulations that we go through. So it's a nice relief for our souls to be able to leave our bodies every night and go back to the spirit side, sort of for a timeout, if you will.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's very important not to listen to not unhappy stories at night and fill your mind with that when you go to bed, is it? Not very good.
No, that's right. You should try to clear your mind of any negative stuff. In fact, before you go to bed, for sure, but actually throughout your life, all during your waking hours, it's really important to try to stifle and shunt to the side any negative thoughts that pop up. Replace them with positive thoughts, because positive thoughts are good. It'll make your day better. It'll make you be a better person for the people you're around. So negative thoughts are a definite no-no and something that we really need to try to stifle. And you know, and if we all got rid of our negative thoughts, we would have a whole lot less crime and conflicts and wars and genocide on our planet. Those all arise from our negative emotions.
They sure would, that's for sure. And a lot of people are worried about failure. They say, oh, I failed. And I say, well, I really don't believe there's no such thing as failure, because failure according to who? Failure according to what? I think it's us who decide that we fail, not really other people. And so I use my so-called failures as extraordinary fertilizers for my many successes. So it works good for me.
Yeah, no, that's actually very good advice, Dr. Ann, is that people shouldn't regard things that they don't want to happen as failures, you know, because there's a lesson for everything. And if you have what may seem to be like a failure in one aspect, you can apply the lesson from that and move on and find a success somewhere else, you know. So there's, in absolute terms, there are no failures for sure. It's just a matter of how we perceive what things happen or how we did or didn't do things.
Yeah, people, that's true. So I find that helps. And then when I start to, like, I was going into a little bit of fear one night, and I used a stop sign I printed off the internet, and I have with a plastic stick on it says stop. And I look at that and say, stop, change direction. Then I'd start saying, thank you for all my blessings. And then before I'm feeling really good again. So there you go.
No, absolutely. That's exactly what you need to do is to try to remain positive all the time. Find the good things in life and instead of searching for the negative or the bad things, and then just have a happier life. And if you're happy, people around you are going to be more happy, and that's the kind of thing that we need to spread throughout our world.
You're absolutely right. Now, I wanted to ask you if you would say you met quite a few people on your trips. And before you say that, I want to know where people can purchase your book so we can make sure that they can jot it down.
Well, they're available in all the popular online bookstores. And if people go to my website, which is garnetschulhauser.com, there are direct buy links to Amazon and Barnes and Noble and the other ones right there. You just have to click on it to get right to where you can buy my books. A lot of bricks and mortar stores have my books. If your favorite bookstore does not, they can order it. So that's the easiest way to get my books. And my books are all available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook format. So whatever medium you like to use, you can get my books in all of those.
Yeah, and folks, what you should do is start with the first one and then buy them all and then start reading the first one, the second one, the third one, and then just wait for the rest of them to come along because there'll be others. Now, how do
Yeah.
you spell your last name for folks to make sure that they get the right spelling?
Okay, last name is Schulhauser. And first name is Garnet, Garnet. And so my website is garnetschulhauser.com. And so you can get all kinds of information about my books on my website. You can dial into my social media sites like Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter and YouTube. On my website, people can access recordings of all of my previous radio shows. And
Yeah, I noticed a lot. You've been on the shows. Well, you've been on my show. I think this is the fourth time or whatever, but you've been on a lot of radio shows. My goodness, I was impressed.
Yeah, I've been on this. This is radio show number 156 for me.
Ah, 156.
Yeah, and so I've been I've been on the radio shows, but the recordings are on my website, so people can or they can go to my YouTube channel because they're all posted there. The recording of this show will get there as well, and the people can sort of go
That's
through
so
them
great.
all and get the whole story.
Now, we're going to go for a short break, and I'll be right back after the short break with more with my special guest, Garnet Schulhauser, and talking about the unknown and exciting things. We'll be right back to the Dr. Anne-Marie Evers Show. And it's so wonderful to have Garnet Schulhauser with me today. And I want to devote some time, Garnet, to talking about who did you meet on the other side? Can you share with some of the important people that you maybe met and had a little chat with?
Sure, I've met with all kinds of wise and famous souls. I've met with Jesus Christ, with his Mother Mary, with Mary Magdalene, with Moses, with Muhammad, with Buddha, and I just had a very recent trip, which is going to be described in my next book with Mother Teresa. So it was these are all very wise souls. They all have some bit of wisdom to give to people who are struggling with their journeys on Earth.
That's so
So
wonderful.
it's very fascinating. And the other ones are all in my previous books. Mother Teresa was really quite interesting. She was surprisingly, she was a very humble and humble soul. And like when I questioned her about was she happy about being canonized as a saint by the Roman Catholic Church, and she sort of like said, well, that was no big deal. She said there's lots of people on the planet who have done as many good things or even better things than I have who aren't recognized. She said that she got the sainthood because of all the publicity that surrounded her with her good works in India. And because of that, she said that the Catholic Church felt that they had to honor her in some way. And so they canonized her. So she's Saint Teresa. But she wasn't particularly overly impressed with this. And she said that, the Catholic Church, the practice of canonizing people is kind of an old anachronistic practice of the Catholic Church, and she thought that it didn't really make a lot of sense. But one of the things she said was that what really struck her, excuse me, when she crossed over, was that when she went through her life review. Now, a life review is whatever we all go through when we transition to the spirit side, and the life review, excuse me, as the name indicates, is that we go through a detailed review of the life we've just finished. And so she went through her life review, and she said it's really quite amazing. It's one of the most important things about a person returning to the spirit side after their physical bodies die is to go through this life review, and it really shows you all the places where you didn't realize where you might have hurt people inadvertently. It shows you how you have to be very careful about what you say and do, because you can hurt other people's feelings inadvertently without really trying. And she said it's also good for you to understand that where you've done something good, that you can feel the gratitude and the love that the other people that you helped are showering on you. So it's a very great learning tool. And she said that that was one of the most profound things that she experienced after transitioning over was her life review. And so that's something we should all keep in mind as we, pass from this planet and go to the spirit side, is that we will have this life review, which will really help us understand what we did right, what we did wrong on this journey, and try to plan for the next incarnation and try to do better.
Well, I think that's lovely, and I think I agree with her 100%. And I know when I do something good for someone and they say thank you, it just makes me feel so warm and fuzzy.
Yeah. Well, you see, the thing about a life review is that you not only get to look at what you've done, but you actually get to experience the thoughts and the emotions of the people you interact with, so that you actually get the deep feelings. So if you've helped somebody do something good in this life, you actually feel their emotion, their gratitude, their love that they're sending you, which is more intense and more meaningful than someone here on earth saying to you, "Thank you very much." That makes you feel good. When you're in your life review, you'll feel even way better because you'll feel exactly their gratitude and their emotion towards you.
That's lovely to know. Wow.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the converse works the same way. If you said something mean to somebody, you will get to feel their hurt and their anguish, for your cruel words. And so that's not to try to make you feel bad. It's just to show you that it's very easy to offend other people when you don't really intend to. And it's just a learning tool so that you can think, okay, if I plan my next incarnation, I'm going to try to be better at when I speak to people or interact with people. Try to put myself in their position and think, okay, whatever I'm going to say to them, how might they take this? And if there's any doubt about whether it'll be taken in the wrong way, then it's best not to say it.
Exactly. Well, I think that's really great. And I wanted to ask you a question. Do you have any fear around physical death?
No, I don't. No, I don't at all. And Albert has given me lots of reassurance. I've said to him, Albert, I understand that when my physical body dies, my soul will go to the spirit side. But I said to him, okay, well, what about the death process? Is it going to be painful? Will I be under distress? Will it be a horrible experience? He says, no. He says, because when you're about to die, your soul knows that, and your soul will actually leave your body just before the final moments, so you won't experience any pain or suffering. So, for example, if I was to die in a car accident, my soul would leave my body just before the impact, so I wouldn't feel any pain, any discomfort, and I'd be sort of watching the final moments, hovering above the whole scene. And so he said, yeah, there's no pain or distress involved. It's actually very pleasant. For people who, he said, for people, say, who are dying from terminal cancer in a hospital, what happens is that just before they sort of reach the end, one or more of their spirit guides will actually appear to them. They'll actually show up. No one else can see them, but their spirit guides will be there, and they'll be there to provide comfort to the person, tell them that it's not going to be a painful or distressful when they take their last breath, and that they will be there to take them by the hand and guide them over to the spirit side, where they can be rejoined by all of their loved ones who have passed over previously. So so you're never alone when you die, and it's never a painful experience. It's always you basically don't feel it. You're gone before your body takes its last breath.
That's so comforting to hear. It really is. And I remember one day this gentleman was dying, and I was called to come to see him, and he kept looking up. He kept looking at the door. And he looked at the top of the door, and he just kept staring, and then he would smile the most beautiful smile. And I think I get shivers when I say that, because I think he was seeing his spirit guide.
Oh, absolutely, no question about that. And that just proves what Albert said to me, was that, yeah, people in that situation, their spirit guides will appear to them. No one else can see them, but it's very comforting to them. And so this guy is looking at one of his guides, and he's smiling, because it's like, well, that's great. I'm glad you came, and I'm ready to go with you.
Yeah, and made me feel a lot better. And because he had to go. I didn't feel we lost him from this life, but he's still alive in the next life is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And I think there's so many people we don't quite understand. We were brought up different ways. And I think that, you know, I think that finding out information like you did from people, and you even at one time you met Hitler, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was kind of a different kind of a meeting. Albert, this is on the spirit side, and Albert said, I'm going to introduce you to a couple of gentlemen. So, excuse me, so there sitting on a bench was Jesus Christ and Adolf Hitler, and sort of two polar opposites. You can't, one the embodiment of love and compassion, the other one an evil monster, based on how they lived on Earth. Well,
Exactly.
so it turns out that the guy who spent his last life as Adolf Hitler was a nice young man whose name over there was David. So initially he was in a uniform and looking like Hitler, so I would recognize him. And then he morphed into his normal persona on the spirit side. And he said, "Yeah, I was in my last life as Hitler. I was an awful, evil monster." He said that it hadn't been planned. He had planned in his life beforehand that he wanted to get into politics, or thought that he'd like to, but he didn't know that it would take the turn that it did. So he said, basically, I became so evil because I went off course. I let my negative emotions rule me. And so that's all the damage that I did. But he said, now that he's back on the spirit side, he had his life review. He feels really badly about all the harm he did, all the people he killed. But that he recognized that as a learning tool. He told me that he was quite anxious, planned his next incarnation on Earth so he could come back and try to do a good job and help people this time. So that was very, very encouraging. The other thing he said to me was, which a lot of people would find strange, is that he said that he had met with many of his victims of his, concentration camps over there on the spirit side, and he said there's no animosity, no hatred, no desire for revenge. Those emotions don't exist on the spirit side. So they, back on the spirit side, they recognized him as a soul who was having a journey, and they had no. They just showered him with unconditional love, because that's all there is on the spirit side, is unconditional love. So that's an amazing thing. Like, a lot of people would say, well, that's strange. If I met Hitler, I would, excuse me, I'd want to hate him, but hate doesn't exist there. And so people recognize that the soul who served as Hitler, who was Hitler, was just a soul like them who got into a mess on this planet, a big mess. And that, but now he's back on the spirit side, and he's going to try to do better. So that is a real surprise to a lot of people. It's the same thing as that. I've said to people, if somebody murders you here in this life, when you get back to the spirit side and your perpetrator is there as well, you won't feel any negative emotions. You'll understand that he went off the rails. He let his negative emotions get out of control, and he committed a crime. And so it's a very different perspective there. Which a lot of people find hard to comprehend, hard to accept.
And one thing too now, over when you talk to people over there, are there like money issues, food issues? Is it all? It's a spirit though, isn't it? The spirit doesn't require food, does it?
No, it doesn't require food. Doesn't need to drink. Doesn't need to breathe or procreate. Over there, you're a being of energy. And so you have no physical attributes, so you don't need to do any of that. And of course, no, there's no money. You can have whatever you want over there. It's freely available to everyone. You can create whatever you want through your thoughts. So that if you, for example, if you said, I want to have a red Ferrari, even though you don't need a red Ferrari, you can create one for yourself if you want to. Or if you want to have say I want to have a cheeseburger, even though you don't need to eat, you can create one for yourself if you want. So you can create anything you want. So there's no material shortages. There's no need for money. It's just a very happy place. It's a wonderful place.
Well, what about the people that have done work in certain jobs and they really are they going to continue doing those jobs over there?
Yeah, they can do. They can
careers?
Souls can do whatever they want. There's all kinds of different projects and things they can get into. It's not like how I envisioned when I was raised as a Catholic, that when you went to heaven, you sat on a cloud listening to harp music.
No.
It's totally different. You can go to lectures of famous people. You can attend classes. You can participate in recreational activities. You can do projects. You can spend your time helping other people, like being a spirit guide for souls on Earth, or otherwise sending people messages to try to help out, excuse me, with humans on Earth. There's lots of things you can do, and if you were doing something on Earth that you particularly enjoyed, you can do the same thing over there. I mean, you can. It's basically sky's the limit. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And does that go on for what's the time frame on that? There is no time frame, is
No,
there?
there is no time frame. All souls are eternal, and you can choose to stay on the spirit side forever if you want, or you can choose to, when you get back there, you can choose to reincarnate. You can reincarnate as a human on Earth, or you can incarnate as a different life form on a different planet. And there's no timetable, no deadline. And all you're trying to do as a soul is to grow and evolve, to accumulate knowledge and wisdom. But just your own timetable. Like, you have an eternity, so there's no rush. You can go slow, you can go fast. You can stay on the spirit side forever. I mean, there's a lot of people who say, a lot of people I've met who say, well, there's no way I'm coming back to this hellhole. And I say, well, that's your attitude now, and I understand that. But when you get back to the spirit side, you see things from a different perspective, and you'll see a life on Earth as a human is just a short little adventure that you design to learn things, to grow and evolve, to face challenges, to learn lessons. And so so I say, once you get back there, you may well change your mind. But if you want to, you can stay on the spirit side. You can quit incarnating on Earth as anytime you want, or you can keep on going. Some people have several hundred lives. Some people have 10 lives, and they say, that's it, I'm not going back. So it's entirely up to the soul.
And yeah, that some people say, I never want to come back here again, and they don't, right? Because they say that.
Yeah, no, that's right. It's every soul's choice to decide not to come back to Earth and go somewhere else, or just stay on the spirit side. But you know, from the different perspective over there, it's not a life on Earth doesn't seem so bad when you're sitting there on the spirit side, because you can see sort of the whole picture, and you can see what's happening, and you can see that, okay, when I go into this human body, eventually my body will die and I'll come back here. So it's not a life sentence. It's sort of like a temporary thing. And
you can see the beginning to the ending on that, right?
I'm sorry?
You can see the beginning right to the ending on that one.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You see the whole picture, and so it's not so daunting. But you know, fortunately, when we're born here and we don't remember any of that stuff, then it can seem very daunting. I mean, life on Earth can be very trying, as you well know.
You know, yes. Now, what about the person, the man or lady that has 3 husbands in this life? What happens when she gets there is that it's just all spirit. There is no such thing as jealousy or anger or anything like that, is there?
No, that's right. There are no attachments like we have here with love attachments or marriage or anything else. All souls love each other unconditionally, but there's no family units. There's no couples. So whatever happened, if the woman who had 3 husbands and goes back there, and she meets all of them, it's all good. There's no jealousy. There's no attachment. So just an amazing thing. It's just basically unconditional love that every soul has for every other soul.
Well, that's beautiful. So what would you kind of, sum up all the stuff? How would you do that? And to see, the whole thing, what people will learn when they read your books and that. You have sort of like a summary that you can give us?
Well, it's it's hard to summarize it because there's so many different aspects of it. But some of the things that I haven't covered so far are that you have to understand, for example, that it's important to treat the other creatures on our planet with dignity and respect and not abuse them. And humans tend to abuse animals, as you know, every which way. So what Albert told me is that, when you look at an animal, those animals have souls too.
They do. Yeah.
When I first asked Albert the question, do animals have souls? And he said, you need only look into the eyes of your little dog to find your answer. And it's very true. Look into their eyes, and so people realize that, then maybe they'll be more inclined to treat animals with more respect and dignity, and be good to them and not abuse them. So that's one of the messages I got. Yeah, one of the things I got from Albert. And the other thing is, he says you have to one of the real important things is that when you're meeting other people on the planet, when you're your neighbors, your friends, people walking down the street, you have to realize that they are all souls having a human journey just like you, and that every soul is connected to the source and to each other. And so that when you look at someone who has a different color of skin, speaks a different language, worships a different God, that you have to sort of not be fearful or distrustful of them because of that, but understand that they chose a different journey from you, and they're in a different body, and they're having a different facing different challenges and learning different lessons. So if you understand that, then there's less propensity for us to be angry or distrustful or hateful of people who look different than us. So that's really important as you move your way through things on this planet.
That is a good thing too, yeah. And so one thing I wondered, how, in the Bible it says and God created the earth, heaven and the earth. What were these in the teachings that you have? Was that already created when the people came into living, or how did that work?
Well, how it all started, Dr. Ann, is that at one point all there was a singularity of energy in the void, which was the source, and then the source decided to fan out and explore the void, and so there was an explosion of energy, which some scientists call the Big Bang, and so the energy exploded and it fanned out, and eventually the energy congealed into energy, or sorry, into matter, formed gases, and the gases formed other molecules, and eventually the stars and the planets were all formed. So this all resulted from the Big Bang. And so souls, like you and I, we were created by the source as individual aspects of itself. And our mission was to basically fan out from the source, fan out and explore the universe, and go through these various incarnations and journeys, because that's the way for the source to get to know what it had created. Because everything that you experience and I experience is also vicariously experienced by the source. So that's the way for the source to understand the magnificence of what it had created. And so that's where, so that's really the creation story according to Albert, which doesn't exactly jive with the Bible, but there's a lot of things in the Bible that don't really jive with what Albert has told me. So there is some conflicts.
Yes, and there was one thing that someone asked me, and I don't know. They say, how could a loving God be rain all the things on Sodom and Gomorrah, and innocent people died? And what's the answer to that? Does Albert have an answer for that?
Well, and you're right, because the source is all loving, and the source does not manipulate events. So when the Bible says that Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed, they say that God did it. Well, it wasn't God, because the source doesn't do those things. The source loves us all unconditionally. The source understands that we're on journeys to learn and experience things. And so, yeah, the source is not like some old guy sitting on a throne in the sky with a long beard who's pulling strings on the puppets on Earth. That's not happening. So whatever happens, whatever bad happens, is caused by either natural phenomena on planet Earth or by what men do. And so the source does not get involved, doesn't manipulate things, doesn't judge us. And so the source is like a passive observer to see what's going on with all these individual aspects it has created. And it continues to create these souls, and the souls fan out and explore the universe. And it's a never-ending trek, because there's no end to the universe, and it's constantly changing. So you can never sort of run out of things to do in the universe in terms of exploring.
And we focus on unconditional love, don't we?
Yes. Yeah, and that's all there is. It's hard for people to really comprehend that. But unconditional love just means that you don't expect, there's no strings attached. You don't expect anything in return. It's just love, and there's no judgment. So whatever, and the souls of the spirit side, one soul doesn't look at the other one and say, well, I've seen what you did on your lives on Earth, and you were a bad person, and you killed people, and you did all this sort of thing. There's none of that sort of judgment, because all that stuff is left behind on planet Earth. And so every soul on the spirit side, it's unconditional love, no judgment, no strings attached, not expecting anything in return, which is really in contrast to a lot of times love on Earth has strings attached. You expect something back.
Exactly. I'll give you this if you do that for me. Yeah, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And time. There's no time over there, is there? No,
linear time doesn't exist. So everything is one big now. So we're here. We're so used to past, present, and future. It doesn't exist over there. That's linear time is an illusion on the Earth plane. So over there, it's just all one big now, which is really a difficult concept for most people to wrap their minds around.
It does take that time. Well, you know what? It's interesting, but we've got almost come to the top of the hour. And before we go, I just want to, can you name off your books, your title of your books again, please, Garnet?
Sure. This is in order of the date that they were published. So the first book is Dancing on a Stamp. Second book is Dancing Forever with Spirit. Third book is Dance of Heavenly Bliss. And the fourth book is Dance of Eternal Rapture. And the fifth one hasn't been published yet, but it will hopefully be out in the next year or so.
And that's the 4 books they can purchase right now.
4 books you can purchase. Yeah, 4 books are out right now in 3 formats: paperback, ebook, and audiobook.
Thank you very much. Well, it's been delightful, and we've got about 1 minute here, and I just want to take time to thank you. And I would like to have you on again, you know, when you get closer to getting your other book out, and even come on again, and I'll have a lot of questions from people, and perhaps I could pose them all to you, and we could do it over the air.
Absolutely. I'm delighted to be on your show again anytime, Dr. Ann.
Pardon me?
I'd be delighted to be on your show anytime, any format, yes. Whether it's a Q&A.
I love that. I would love that. Yes, and I'm going to set that up. So
okay.
We must go now, folks. Remember, email me at AnnmarieEvers@shaw.ca, and go to my website, AnnmarieEvers.com. And please check out Garnet's website and all this wonderful stuff he has. And please let me know so I can pass the messages on to him. And thank you so much. And thank you again, Garnet, for being so wonderful. And we'll talk to you pretty soon again. And lots of love to everyone. See you next time. Bye-bye.